Evil can seem like such an abstract concept. We can say who was evil. Serial killer documentaries, 20th century dictators come to mind, but rarely do we see it as being at stake in our everyday lives. Novels alert us to this blind spot. Recently, I was summarizing the themes of classic stories. I came across two central patterns of evil that I want to share with you now, so hopefully you can cut it off whilst it's still small enough to manage. Pattern 1. Frustration with human limitations produces evil. Here, I want to take the opening scene of Faust by Goethe. Imagine a professor in a dim and dusty study. He's huddled over a book with his head in his hands. For a decade, his pursuit of knowledge has brought him not one step closer to the truth, money, or honors. He feels like he's a pretender in front of his students and becoming like the dust in his own study. And so he says, "Es möchte kein Hund so länger leben, also habe ich mich der Magie ergeben." Even a dog wouldn't live this way, so I have turned to magic. He summons the devil and makes a wager. If the devil can show him one experience that will make life seem worthwhile, then he can claim Faust's soul for eternity. This is a stunning portrait of despair through human limitation. I've put a link to the German performance in the description, and even if you don't get the language, you will sense the electric charge, the power, the weight, the stress, the desire in the words. This wager leads to all sorts of shortcuts and deceptions and results in the death of a young woman. I want to pick out two patterns that will show up in our own lives if we are paying attention to the creep of evil. Firstly, how the devil talks. Sometimes the devil acts like Faust's servant and flatters him. Other times he laughs everything off because everything's a joke and life has no meaning anyway, so damn the consequences. Over time, you realize that you actually talk to yourself this way sometimes. The devil's voice is one of the voices in your own head. Not the only one, but it's one of many. And you can notice in what situations it rises up to flatter you or deceive you. The beauty here is how Goethe takes the abstract concept of evil and gives it human form. This way we will recognize how it acts in the world, and this serves as our defense. The second element is that hedonism is the warning sign. Now this is more correlation than causation. I'm not saying that hedonism leads directly to evil, but it often accompanies it. Faust's long-term efforts have ended up in nothing, and so he turns to short-term pursuits. He played the honest game and got no reward, and now he is justified in taking everything he can get. Pure hedonism is often driven by an underlying sense of despair, and it is the despair that can be the source of evil. The second pattern is that exclusion from love produces evil. I'll take the example of the Phantom of the Opera. Physically deformed as a child, the Phantom was shunned by his family. He ran away from home where he became a performer at a freak circus. Rejected by the world, he now takes refuge in a cave under the opera house and hides his deformity with a mask. The most interesting thing here, though, is that the Phantom's love never disappears. It merely gets channeled into music. There's a reason why he takes refuge in the opera house, why he coaches Christine to sing and promotes her career. The first lesson I took was that a lot of the evil acts are in service to this higher calling of music. Often, evil people think that they are serving the good. But while the Phantom probably loves Christine, his actions are also motivated by a darker sense that other people in the opera house just aren't of the same worth as his desires, and by a sense of justified revenge against the world that has rejected him. The second lesson is that the love that remained from the Phantom's difficult childhood, the love that never went away, becomes the source of his redemption. When Christine sacrifices her own future in order to save her fiancé, that breaks the spell and the Phantom lets them both leave. This brings me to a final observation. There is something in the operation of novels that is successful in producing a response in the real world. A response to evil, but also to any other aspect of life. Stories generate action by engaging emotion. Now, I could tell you these patterns in a single line about being excluded from love, about human limitations, and people would say, yeah, I get it, they would file it away, it won't happen to me. But then in a week's time, they won't remember it, and they won't act on it unless you latch on to that emotion. Take writing, apparently the most intellectual of all activities. But if you don't sit down with the emotion day after day after day, you're not going to finish that story, and you're not going to write it in a way that resonates with the reader. It will feel dead on the page. Emotion is the fuel, and the mind is just the steering wheel. This is the function of stories. They get to the heart and the head at the same time. By reading these novels, you will build a response to evil into your instincts. That way, hopefully, you will recognize the devil when he walks up to you at a bar and offers you a drink.